Now, which one of these should you choose? Royal Enfield's Interceptor 650, we reviewed it and were impressed by it. But it has this racier sibling. And now it's time for us to get to know the Continental GT650 a little bit better. Now, first things first, when talking about the Continental GT650, the most popular question is that frame the same as from the Continental 535? The short answer to that is no. This had to be really a stronger, larger frame to accommodate that engine. But the first real comparison that needs to be made is with its other sibling. But what's changed from the Interceptor to the Continental GT? Well, honestly, in terms of the chassis and the engine, nothing at all. The chassis is unchanged. The springs, the dampers, they aren't stiffer, softer, bigger or smaller. They are the same. But instead of keeping the preload on the rear shocks at the softest, here for the sportier Continental GT, the default setting has been bumped up by 2 steps. Aside from that, the only real change is that handlebar. You have clip-ons now, which are hugging the front forks. Well, to complement the bars, you also get rear set foot pegs. They're set further back, they're set a little higher up to complement that lean forward that you get from the bars. And what's important for me is that because they're set further back, they don't have to be set wide to avoid the engine. So they sit right next to the frame, and when you're riding hard, you can really feel the narrowness of this motorcycle. And aside from that, the heel plates, they are perfectly positioned for you to just press on them with the ball of your feet on the pegs, so that you get that nice feel of what is happening at the rear end when you're riding hard. Now, something else that starts to make sense here on the Continental GT, and we couldn't figure out why it was there on the Interceptor, is this little protector here. Because now with the aggressive seating position, your knees end up really close to the cylinder head. And the seating position also eggs you to ride hard. The lean forward onto the bars may be less aggressive than on the Continental GT535. But still, it will help you get fitter. This actually feels like a motorcycle that you'd want to hustle through the bends, find out how far you could lean it over. The upswept exhausts give it more clearance, so you can lean it a fair bit. And you can also feel how much grip is on offer, which is plenty, thanks to those same Pirellis from the Interceptor. But it does feel more confidence-inspiring when hustled. Now, if you want a sportier character, undoubtedly the Continental GT is the one to go for. Not because it will be dramatically quicker in corners, but because it will give you a better feel of what's happening with the front end. The weight really settles it down. That shiftiness that we felt on the Interceptor is still here, but it is dialed down a lot more because of the additional weight that's landing up on the front wheel. It gives you good feel, and you can really commit into the corners because of that. And well, like we said, the brakes on the Interceptor were fantastic, and that's no different here. But one complaint that we had on the Interceptor felt a bit more obvious here. I wish the ABS intervention was a bit smoother. So, it plays the fun handling role well. But there is one small downside for every day. Because of the narrower bars, the low position, you have less leverage, and which means you do feel the weight more when you're steering the motorcycle. And for just everyday commuting, that might seem a bit painful. But when you find the right road, you'd be surprised at how good the Continental GT650 feels like to ride. So what else has changed? Well, for the rider, what will make a difference is that the seat height is lower by 10 millimeters, and what will make a difference on the ride is the fact that the Continental GT is lighter. How's that?
Well, basically it's missing the main stand and the fuel tank is smaller. It's 12.5 liters, whereas on the Interceptor it's 13.7, and that should make it faster too, shouldn't it?
Well, it should be a bit quicker, but not by much, because
now the engine has been carried over unchanged, but we're exploring a different side of it here on the Continental GT. We didn't use the revs so much out there on the Interceptor, but here on the Conti, you do want to rev it up. And we did, all the way to the red line quite often, which is 7,500 RPM. And if you're thinking about the ton, which is something RE wanted to do with this platform, well, a ton is 160 kilometers an hour. And on the Conti GT, you can get to that figure really quickly, and you can stay there. You can cross that mark on the speedo easily, and it can hover in that zone smoothly without making a fuss.
the slip assist clutch means you can slam down through the 6-speed gearbox and the rear wheel won't lock up, which will keep your corner entries smooth and clean.
So yes, those little facets do make this a fun motorcycle even when you're thrashing it hard. Now picking between the RE650 twins is going to be tough because essentially at the heart of it they are the same motorcycle, which means you get an engine which is smooth, punchy, usable, you have a chassis that's comfortable enough, that's sharp enough, it's spirited. And on the Conti GT650, of course, it's the spirit of sportiness that really shines, and it really does shine when you find the right road. That's where you'll enjoy riding this motorcycle, and on an everyday basis, it will end up feeling a bit heavier, a bit more to manage than the Interceptor. If you're willing to live with that, sure, the Conti GT does make a lot of sense. But for everybody else, me included, the Interceptor is comfier, is more practical, and still fun enough.